Hi guys, and welcome back to Is It Worth It Reviews. Today we are talking about an upgrade to the Eversolo DMP-A6 streamer, and that's a linear power supply coming from the LHY called LPS, short for linear power supply I suppose, A6, so LPS-A6. And currently it's in the Eversolo DMP-A6, so I will not hold it in my hand, but I'll put some pictures on the screen. So how does that work? Well, if you remember, DMP-A6 is powered directly from the AC outlet, so it doesn't have any external bricks. Instead, its power supply is located inside the unit, and this is it. The thing that interests us is that the power supply is not on the main board with other components, but as you can see, it's located on a separate board held by 6 screws, and there is one cable that connects the power supply to the rest of the device. So what we can do is that we can just unscrew carefully this A6 unit. We can disconnect, unscrew, and lift its power supply. This is a small switching power supply, as you can see. And LHY made one power supply that fits that description. So I opened my Eversolo DMP-A6 and I inserted that new linear power supply. You can see it on the right with the blue transformer. One last piece of information, but quite important I suppose, the price of LPS-A6 is $286 US. And that would be all. There's not much to talk about specs and features here. It's just a linear power supply. It's made specifically for DMP-A6 and it goes inside of it. And the direct A-B comparison between the default and upgraded power supply is not that easy really, unless you have two DMP-A6 units, which I don't. So I had to settle for listening quite critically the original power supply, then changing to the new one, then listening to that one. Also, very useful in this comparison was me comparing A6 to some other device, some other standalone DACs and other streamers. But I did compare A6 before and after the upgrade, so I could see how the relationship between that other DAC or streamer and Eversolo changes with the change of the power supply. So let's talk sound. Upgrading to LPS-A6, I definitely noticed a difference. Now, in terms of sheer detail retrieval, it's not a huge difference really, because DMP-A6 is a very resolving and clean and crisp sounding device to boot with. But there is a noticeable improvement in terms of tone timbre and just inner tone detailing, inner tone texture, and that's actually what brings that richness and that rich tone timbre that I'm describing. And with LPS-A6, Eversolo definitely starts sounding more relaxed, calmer, more natural, while at the same time keeping its cleanliness and clarity that it exhibited even with the default power supply. Also dynamics and just how quick and speedy it sounds, that's something that I praised before. That's all still there. Nothing is diminished with this LHY power supply. So it's a clear upgrade. It's not a side grade or just change in tonality or something like that. It is an upgrade, definitely. And the good thing is that that goes across the board for both digital outputs and analog outputs. And just to give you an idea of how much of improvement, I'll tell you one example for digital outputs and one example for analog outputs. So let's start with digital outs. So if you follow my channel regularly, you know that I really like Eversolo as a digital streamer. but maybe you saw my Volumio Rivo review. And in that review, I told you that Volumio Rivo, by default, out of factory with its own small switching power supply, sounds just a hair better than Eversolo. It's really difficult to notice that. But it is a little bit fuller and richer sounding, a little bit more spacious than Eversolo. And then when I add linear power supply Allo Shanti to Volumio Rivo, that gap increases. Volumio Rivo starts sounding noticeably fuller and richer with tone, and just it feels more true to life. But now we have a linear power supply inside the DMP-A6 too. And now I suppose it becomes the battle of linear power supplies, not only devices. And it was interesting for me to notice that the LPS-A6 that I added to Eversolo actually made a bigger difference in the sound of the DMP-A6 than Allo Shanti did in the sound of Volumio Rivo. So Eversolo DMP-A6 matched and even slightly surpassed the sound of Volumio Rivo plus Allo Shanti, meaning that the linear power supply itself that we are reviewing today is a really good one, is a well-made one. So now with this new linear power supply, Eversolo sounds slightly lusher and fuller and richer and reveals a little bit more tiny details from the recording, especially when it comes to those inner tone details. And that's most noticeable in acoustic instruments. It doesn't matter if we are talking about string instruments, wind instruments, they sound a little bit richer and more natural through the DMP-A6. Now let's move to analog outputs and the DAC section. If you remember my original review, I compared it to topping E70 Velvet, and I concluded that the internal DAC and E70 Velvet, they were on pair. That was that tier of DACs. And Eversolo had a little bit more clarity and dynamics and punch, but E70 Velvet sounded a little bit richer and tonally fuller. Well, now with this linear power supply upgrade, the Eversolo completely matches that fullness and tone richness and even surpasses it of E70 Velvet. And in terms of soundstage width and separation and layering, it also gets above E70 Velvet. Now it easily competes with pricier topping D70 Pro, Octo and Sabre, both of them. Now the sheer detail retrieval is at that level. And if anything, now with this new power supply, I even slightly preferred internal DAC of Eversolo to both D70 Pros. It just sounded a bit more natural and richer. If you compare it to something like Chord Mojo 2, it's still not that rich. It's still not that gorgeous sounding in the mid-range. Mojo 2 is a champion when it comes to that, but on the other hand, Eversolo does sound cleaner on the edges. It's quicker when it needs to be and more dynamic when it needs to be in dynamic songs. And my last comparison, I know that many of you often ask what if I compared this upgraded Eversolo A6 to Gustard R26. Well, as good as Eversolo sounds, upgraded especially, it's not a match to Gustard R26. R26 with its own streamer, actually it's a renderer. You have to use like some sort of third-party software like Roon. By the way, link is down below the video. Check it, try it for free. It's an affiliate link, you would be helping my channel too. So Roon or something like Bubble UPnP to use UPnP protocol. There is no true streaming software and true streaming capabilities inside the Gustard R26. But if you're okay with having just a renderer and paying extra price, because it's still pricier device even after the upgrade, R26 does sound more spacious, even richer. The soundstage is huge and deep, and it's still my reference DAC between 1,000 and 2,000 euros or dollars. It goes undefeated. But on the other hand, Eversolo is much more feature-packed platform. It has much more streaming capabilities. It has local storage. Well, you can add local storage by adding an SSD disk, and it's just a great value. What else to say? If you're the owner of Eversolo DMP-A6, you already own a great device. But is this upgrade worth it? Well, in my opinion, it's worth it. It lifts the performance of both digital outs and analog outs to a tier above the one that it was in before. As I said, as good as DMP-A6 actually sounds, this linear power supply improves that across the board. I like it. I would personally invest that much into improving my own DMP-A6. That's all for today. I hope you like this video and see you next time. Bye.